Welcome everybody to the Real Dealz podcast, one of the top-ranked real estate investing podcasts for the last 7 years. This is the place to be for investing strategies you can actually use, expert interviews, and of course, some good old-fashioned entertainment. Now, here's your host for the show, Elliot, the REI guy, Smith. Well, what's up, everybody? Remember me? Maybe some of you guys. Remember when we started this show back in 2013? I was your host, Tucker Merrihew. Hey, I'm back this week. Elliot wanted me to create a little bit of content for you guys around starting your own podcast, and more specifically, starting a local podcast. And of course, I've had a little time away from the microphone, and so I said, sure, I'm happy to jump back on here and kind of give my thoughts, because we all know I like to talk, right? So here's what I'm going to chat about this week, and hopefully you guys get some value from it. I want to talk about why and how you should start your own podcast, or maybe how and then why. But either way, there's a lot of value that can come from it. There's just a unlimited amount of upside. I'm sure many of you guys have seen, the meteoric rise of many podcasters lately. A friend of mine, Steve Trang, he's got a big show. He went from a nobody to a somebody, right, pretty quickly using podcasting. I mean, he did put in a lot of work, and let's not deny that. But, in a relatively short amount of time, there's been a bunch of other folks as well. If you look at the Joe Rogan show, that thing is blown up, right? Joe Rogan is a household name because of his podcast. And so there's a lot of value in podcasting. There's a lot of you can really change the trajectory of your life, but also, and more importantly, you can change the trajectory of your peer group, right? And so one of the most important things that's happened over the course of my kind of progression here as a podcaster is I've gotten to know so many people that I would have never, ever gotten to know before. And, that's just been an amazing blessing. And, Elliot's one of them, just tons of people, our whole DFA that we've built out, and many of you guys that are listeners. I've got to talk with you, I've got to coach some of you, and it's just been awesome. So creating your own podcast can be a little bit daunting. And, there is a little bit of fear to it. I remember the first time I put the microphone in front of me, I talked for about 8 seconds and I said, what the hell am I going to say, right? So you kind of got to get over that and just get over the fact that you don't have to be the expert, right? You don't have to know everything. You just have to kind of take people on a journey, right? You just have to kind of have some good talking points. You have to kind of explore some thoughts around those talking points. And of course, if you bring guests on, you can talk to them and you can kind of lead the conversation a little bit and just have good in-depth conversation. But more importantly, what I really want to talk to you guys about is starting a local show, because a lot of people have started a national show, and I mentioned a few names that have risen to be household names because of that. But one of the things that we did that's different, beyond the Real Dealz podcast you're listening to here, is I started a local show back in 2015 called the Portland Real Estate Podcast. And that podcast it served a very different purpose than what the national show did. Now, it did a lot of the same things, right? I became kind of a household name in the real estate investor world nationally, and that's exactly what the local show did. But it really strengthened my brand. It built my business here locally. It kind of took us to another level. Now, the products and the projects that we were doing and the products that we were putting in market, that left an impact on the market as well, and it started to build our brand in a very, very good way. But by creating a local show, it put me in front of every single real estate professional in Portland. And now they all listen to the Portland Real Estate Podcast. Now, of course, the numbers aren't as big as a national show because the pool of listeners that we have is just a lot smaller. But even though that's the case, the value that I get from doing that show is tremendous. And, it's connected me with countless individuals. It's brought us countless deals, because that's the other thing, right? You get in front of these people, just like you guys are listening to me now. You feel like you know me. Some of you hopefully like me, right? And that same thing happens on a local level. And if you can do that, you can get in the earbuds of other real estate professionals, and namely realtors, right, in your market that have opportunities for your business. They'll reach out to you. They'll call you. And you can pair your podcast with marketing to those agents. And that's one of the things that we do as well. So that's a good tip for you. The other thing I will mention is when you're starting a local show, it's good to have a little bit of diversity in terms of the hosts, right? And when I say that, what I mean is, I'm in the real estate investor side of the business. And so what I did is I went out and got a host that's on the realtor side of the business, right? He deals with retail real estate. I deal with wholesale real estate. Now, of course, we sell our projects on the retail market, but he's all retail and I'm all wholesale, for the most part anyway, in terms of the acquisition and most of the world that I live in. And so having that diversity on the microphone, it gives different perspectives, right? It gives people the ability to kind of see the business from multiple different perspectives. And that's really, really helped the show. So if you're going to start a local show, I would suggest finding a great co-host that's kind of a yin to your yang and can provide a little bit different vantage point on the real estate business. Now, a couple other things I want to mention. Number one is don't sweat the small stuff, right? Don't sweat the technical difficulties. A lot of people get really wrapped up in it's got to be perfect production-wise. It doesn't. If you're shooting videos, they don't have to be perfect. Just get a good logo, get a good intro, and just let it rip. And people will listen, because the reality is that local shows for real estate, it's not a very crowded space. There's hardly any competition. And if you get out there and you do it, you're going to get listeners and you're really going to build your brand. So that's the one thing. The other thing is don't look at the stats. That's the biggest thing when you start a podcast is everybody's so fixated on the number of downloads. Do not look at the stats, at least for the first couple months. That would be my suggestion. And, really gauge it on the interaction that you have with your listeners, people that reach out to you. I tell that to Elliot all the time. It doesn't matter how many people listen. It matters how many people reach out and tell you that the content that you're putting out there is changing their life, right? For the better. In whatever way it is. And that's how I gauge the success of a show. And especially on a local level, because again, you're fishing in a smaller pond. So if you think you're going to hit these ginormous download numbers, you're just not. But you can still have huge impact even without huge download numbers. And, it's just a great thing. So in wrapping up here, I would say starting a podcast is an amazing journey. I've been on a couple of them now. I'm about to embark on a third one here at some point this year. I'll keep you guys posted on that. But beyond that, start a local show. It's a great thing to do. It'll build your brand, and there's hardly any competition, so you'll get a lot of listeners. All right, guys, hopefully you enjoyed that, and you can take some golden nuggets from what I told you and go out there and start a show. All right, Real Dealz podcast listeners, I want to talk quickly about our show's sponsor, Iron Bridge Lending. If you guys have not reached out to Iron Bridge already to talk to them about funding some of your upcoming flip projects, I highly encourage you to do so. I've known the owner of Iron Bridge for a very long time. I've personally borrowed millions of dollars from them over the years to do a number of different projects, and I can say without a doubt, they are the best hard money lending company I have ever come across, and that is the reason why they are the sole sponsor of this show. I've had a lot of other companies reach out to me and want to sponsor this show, but I just won't do it. I feel like I need to be genuine in who we have sponsoring the show, and it needs to be somebody that I've personally done a ton of business with. So I personally vouch for their ability to be the best, hands down, in the world of hard money lending. You won't find better programs, you won't find better terms, and they're lending or will be lending in over 20 states. So chances are, if you're hearing this in whatever state you're in, it's definitely worth it to check out their website, reach out to them, see if they're lending in your state, and if they are, I would absolutely encourage you to do business with them. Another very cool thing to note is that they have a program for most rehabs where you can actually borrow up to 90% of the purchase price. Now, this is given the fact that you are actually buying a deal, which if you're listening to the show, that means you probably are. But if you have an actual deal on the table, they'll fund up to 90% of your purchase price, and they'll even give you rehab funds on top of that, which means that it only takes 10% down to get into a project, which is unbelievable in the hard money world. So do yourself a favor, reach out to Iron Bridge Lending, have a conversation with them, see if they're a good fit for you and for your next project. I can guarantee you that you'll be happy that you did.
What's going on, Real Dealz podcast listeners? Pretty excited today. We got Kevin Leahy here for episode 366. If you don't know who Kevin is, he's the guy behind the scenes that produces all the Bigger Pockets podcast content. From the business show, the main show, to the rookie show, all of it. And so we're going to talk about podcasting today and how we're going to help grow your real estate business. So Kevin, what's going on? Thanks for coming on.
What's up? I've been looking forward to this, man. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate the energy that you're bringing to the Real Dealz show. And I've loved this podcast ever since the beginning episodes. I went through and binged them all, and it was a huge part of my development as an investor. So I'm glad to see you taking the torch.
Yeah, thanks and most people don't know, but you kind of we've been helping you with real estate a little bit, and you're getting some good traction there. Congratulations on your first kid, by the way. So I think that paused your real estate business for a minute. But then you've also been giving me some feedback on the podcast, because Tucker's big shoes to fill. That'd be like going and trying to fill Brandon Turner on the Real Deal or on the Bigger Pocket show. And like, I'm going to take over Brandon's spot. And they're like, who's this guy?
Definitely, man. And that's a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about in this episode is some of the tips that I'm giving you in trying to develop, like, what is that unique thing about your show that really makes the Real Dealz podcast your show? And then hopefully our listeners today can take that and apply it, I hope, to create their own show, or at the very least, they can think like a radio producer or a podcast producer in order to get themselves booked on podcasts. Because it's really like the new kind of like having a book, right? Being an author or something like that. It's sort of a key part of your resume now, and it builds on itself, and you get more and more influence and authority to achieve whatever you want to achieve.
Yeah, it's funny. And I literally had just raised $1.5 million from these doctors. And one of the guys said, when he was telling the other doctors who I was, he's like, he's been on Bigger Pockets twice. Like, he's legit. Like, they're like, this guy's on Bigger Pockets. They're not going to just put some fly by night guy on there. So like that built credibility. Or like I talk to people and they're like, oh, I heard you on Bigger Pockets or on this show. And it's like, it immediately gives me credibility in the industry for selling the call center, for talking to investors that are investing in my deal, private lenders, all these different things, or partnering with other people. It just gives you instant credibility.
Exactly. And it's a self-selecting thing where the people that are drawn to you are going to engage with you more and more. And the people that maybe are interested in something else, they're just not even going to hit you up. But when you're the host of a show, it's even a higher level of authority. And I'm sure we'll get into it. You don't even need to have done a lot of deals in order to be the host and to be the connector of people and sort of the guide instead of like the guru who has all the answers. You really just need to be someone who knows how to seek out that knowledge and is resourceful and can create relationships. And we had a guy on Bigger Pockets a month ago or so named Jamie Gruber. And I'm not sure if he had done a single multifamily deal. And yet he started a multifamily group and he had people bringing him multifamily deals.
Yep.
And he wound up doing one. And so, in a super competitive niche like that, how do you get deals? Well, probably through relationships, influence, referrals, rather than becoming some expert on, like whatever, public records, something like that. It's all about relationships.
Well, it's like Brandon, like 18 months ago, he's like, I want to go be a mobile home park investor. Like, start bringing me a deal, started talking about it all the time on the show. And now all of a sudden he owns over 100 million of mobile home parks and raised $20 million in the last year or whatever. Right. So it just kind of works. So why don't we dive into, we're going to talk a little bit about who you are, where you came from, why you are the guy, and have this authority. And then what are you going to kind of talk about so people can kind of pick and choose what they want to listen to if they don't want to listen to the whole thing? Why don't you kind of outline where we're going to go with this?
Yeah. So by the end of this episode, I hope to give people 4 direct action steps to get themselves booked on podcasts. Okay. If they want to promote something, if they just want to get out there and kind of raise their profile and do a little personal branding, whatever their goal is, how do you get past that gatekeeper, whether it's the host or if it's a bigger show that has a producer like the Bigger Pockets podcast? How do you kind of think in a way that's going to give you the best chance to go after those limited guest appearances and take advantage of those opportunities the best you can, right? And so I'm going to give kind of my 4 tips on that, and then stick around for the end, or just skip ahead maybe to the final, third of the show. And that's when we'll be talking about 4 steps to start your own local real estate investing podcast, or your own just local or your own real estate investing podcast. But I'm going to make a pretty strong case, I hope, that local real estate investing podcast is the way to go. And that's something that Tucker obviously talked about in the intro here, and we'll get deeper into that. So I hope people take those takeaways, and we can learn a little bit more about me first, but I hope to just give you guys a ton of value. And obviously we'll just scratch the surface, but honestly, with a lot of this stuff, people get caught up. It's just the same as real estate investing. People get caught up on, should I create an LLC? With podcasting, people get caught up on, I don't know which mic to get. I don't know which hosting platform to use. And I'm going to tell you today that none of that stuff matters that much. It's all Googleable in a day. And I'm going to try to teach you the stuff that you should really focus on to give yourself a good chance to succeed.
Yeah. It's like, I talk to new investors all the time, and they're like, a lot of it, like with your pro leads, these guys are like, they're setting up their website, they're setting up their CRM, they're doing this and all these things, except talking to sellers. So it's the same thing I talk about all the time. Just talk to sellers. Like, go drive for dollars, go skip trace that list, get a simple call rail number, and go call people. That's all you need. And then you can use a Google Drive form for most of it until you need a CRM, don't need a website, don't need to just go talk to people. So it's going to be the same thing in the podcasting, guys. Everybody wants to overcomplicate it, like they're taking action, but it's not producing any results.
There's so many parallels too with podcasting. It's become very saturated, right? The competition is very high. It's the same as going after deals right now. You really have to do something different to stand out, and you have to do the hard work to think creatively about what is that different thing that I'm offering, rather than the whole monkey see, monkey do thing. So ton of parallels with that. And, I've called you out a couple of times about, hey man, you're messing around with the different settings on the camera. Is that the number one thing that you should be doing to grow the Real Dealz podcast? Or should you be thinking a little bit more about, what your premise of your show is and what your core beliefs are and who you should bring on in order to like further that, right? So a lot of times it's the hardest thing that we procrastinate longest that we should be working on the hardest.
Yeah, exactly. So let's get into who you are. How old are you?
34.
34. All right. And so you live in Washington, D.C., married, have a brand new, super handsome stud son. Healthy, mom's healthy.
Check out the show notes. We'll put a bunch of baby photos. That's what they came for here for.
Yeah, exactly. And so how old is he? 2 months now?
He's 1 month.
1 month. Okay. Yeah. He's just early March.
Yeah.
And so you're learning how to be a new dad. Are you scared shitless, by the way?
Dude, I was thinking, I knew this would come up and I was like, how do I say something original that hasn't been said about parenting? Obviously nothing. Everyone says, it's crazy, you don't sleep. All that is so true. I've just thought, man, choose a good partner if you're going to do this, because it's tough to do. It'd be very tough to do on your own. So major props to people that do it on their own. And then it'd also be tough to do with someone you don't like that much. And I know, a lot of people in that situation. So I just give a big shout out to my wife and such a great team member. And as in all things, just choose your partner carefully. And then if you do have a great partner, then it can be super rewarding and awesome.
Yeah. I know the first couple of nights, because we put Monty in his room basically after the first night. I was so nervous. I went and laid down on the ground with a pillow and a blanket because I was so worried. Is he breathing? Is he breathing? Even now, sometimes I still go in there and be like, something just goes in my head. And I'm like, man, I'm just gonna go check on him. I put my hand on him, make sure. Then I try not to wake him up, but I'm just so stressed.
I put the thing, where you strap them to your chest and you walk around. We just used that the other day for the first time. And I was worried that I was, smothering him too tight with that thing. And I took him out, and it's probably such a uptight first time dad move. By the second kid, you'll be just throwing him around. No problem.
Exactly. So why don't you talk a little bit about who you are, your background, how you got started working for BP, kind of go for there. And then also a little bit about your real estate investing journey so far.
Yeah. So I moved to DC 11 years ago now, for an internship with NPR, working out of their headquarters here. Right. So, it's funny. I got into the radio game at first, but it's all stuff that translates perfectly to podcasting. It's all about audio editing, gathering good sound, understanding storytelling and how to write for the ear rather than, normal writing that you would read in a book, which is a totally different ball game. So I spent 8 years at NPR, and I was working on a hardcore morning news show. So, we went to the White House. I met Obama. We did an interview with Obama. I went to Iran.
Were you the producer?
I was the producer. So I would handle audio editing stuff. But I would also script interview questions for hosts. So I had to be read up on lots of stuff going on in the news. Political things, obviously had to be on my game with that. A lot of Washington politics stuff, but also went to some conflict zones and, was shot at in.
Did you have one of the vests that said media on it?
Yeah. I did have a vest. I did have a bulletproof vest on the border between Israel and the Palestinian territory, Gaza, actually, just a few years ago. And this is my pre-Bigger Pockets life. So I went to back when the Ebola outbreak was happening. All these producers, the more senior producers, didn't want to go, obviously, into Africa, into West Africa in the hot zone. They got families and stuff. And but the news organization said, who will go there and cover this thing, right? We need people to do this. And myself and a couple other younger producers said, hey, screw it, man. We don't have families or anything. Let's go do this. And so I went to I went to Guinea in West Africa and covered Ebola during the Ebola outbreak there. So did a bunch of really crazy stuff. Awesome experience.
How did it shape like who you are as a person to like see, like, I feel like a lot of people in the US, and not making this political by any sense, they don't realize what the rest of the world is like. Like I was in Tijuana in October and I can see America, see houses in America, and I'm standing by tin shacks. It's like so different, right? So like, how did that change your outlook on life going and doing those things?
I think I'll probably give you an answer that's a little different than what you're expecting. It wasn't like, wow, I realized, man, there's poverty out there. I was pretty well traveled before. And even within the US, I kind of had seen a lot of different situations growing up just through various life experiences. So it wasn't like, wow, there's poverty or there's people living in tough circumstances. Obviously there was that. And with news, you cover a lot of tragedy and you kind of see a lot of the darker side of things. But I've always been a little bit drawn to that anyway. But what I would say is, man, I realized that like material stuff didn't seem to have as big of an impact on people's happiness as I thought it did. I realized that people in those countries, a lot of times, it's cliche to say, but man, are they just like us, where all they want to do is support their family, run a business, you know, bring themselves up to the next station in life, right? Have a peaceful life. But I was very much struck by how normal a lot of stuff was to me in different countries and how kind of welcoming and warm people were. You know, I was in Iran, which is technically like one of the biggest enemies of the United States, right? But the warmth that people showed me there, because they were proud of their culture and their country, and they wanted to bring me in for tea and show like, hey, we have really good food and all this stuff. So, obviously there's a lot of conflict out there, and journalism brings you right into that. And it's a lot of responsibility telling those stories because there's geopolitical stuff and, the facts are up for interpretation a lot of times. But man, I was just struck by kind of how normal a lot of places were and how they kind of looked at the US like there were weird things about the US too. Like they would look and see like a mass shooting in the US and be like completely like confused by that, even though they're like living in a very poor place. So super awesome experience, broadened my horizons a ton.
We'll have to like shift because like I'm a politics guy. And so like, I want to ask all these questions about politics and people aren't here to listen about that. So let's not that
let's
I don't
do it. You always throw in one.
I want to ask, I have all these questions I want to ask you.
Yeah.
So, but this is the real deal, is not the real politics.
For sure.
So that's where my head goes. So, okay. So you worked at NPR for 8 years and then what happened?
Yeah. So, I kind of burnt out on the just daily news grind, right? 2016, 17, not to make it political, but super sort of adversarial when politics really started ramping up to be that way. And very negative and very 24/7 where you couldn't really turn it off. Like I had to be on Twitter all the time following the most recent kind of tempest in a teapot. And I just wasn't, I had discovered BP around that time and also was kind of running my own little Airbnb out of my condo in DC, which was in a really great location. And so that kind of flipped a switch in my mind of, man, maybe I have a little bit of an entrepreneurial streak here. I kind of remembered that my mom had some rental properties growing up and thought, man, I always thought that was cool how she thought ahead, and she's had those paid off for 20 years now at this point.
Nice.
And I thought, man, like these bigger pockets, it was so cool to me how people committed to real estate as their path to build wealth. Right. And I was just blown away by all the stories and really changed my mindset around self-development and a lot of things that I used to be very skeptical of before. And I kind of started embracing those. And at the same time, realizing I needed to get out of the news game. So what that translated into was me leaving my job at NPR, approaching BP. They didn't have an open position for me, but I applied through their dream job thing on their site where they say, if we don't have a job for you, tell us about your dream job and pitch us on why it should exist. And it was one of those crazy timing things, man, where Brandon and the team happened to be looking for someone to help them kind of scale the podcast thing up. It was really gaining steam and they needed systems and they needed someone to kind of have a little bit of a vision behind creating new shows. And we went back and forth and made an arrangement for me to work remotely from DC. And I've been with them for 2.5 years now. And it's been an awesome time and huge period of growth for myself and for the podcast network at BP. So I kind of handle high level strategy stuff there. I make some decisions about day to day, like bookings and things like that. But mostly I try to focus more on developing talent, creating new programming, and looking out there for better opportunities to monetize the podcast. It's a space that's rapidly changing. So
yeah, and you guys have done I can see it for like when you were coming. I think when you came on, they just had the main show, right? When you came on, so it's just
we had the money podcast as well.
Oh yeah, they had just Scott Trench and they had just kind of started that one, and then you've gone in and done the BP business show. You've added a second show for a weekend show for Brandon. You do the rookie show. You also look like you're doing some Instagram lives with more people, like Ashley Wilson will jump on, some other guys that I don't really know that well. But you've expanded your content reach. I know you guys are pushing a little bit more towards YouTube, some stuff on YouTube, trying to get that out there. I mean,
we also have a podcast called Bigger Pockets Daily. And that's just a audio narrator with a really great voice, reads a new Bigger Pockets blog article every day. And that show comes out 7 days a week. So it's quick hits. It's like 5, 6, 7 minute long episodes.
How do those
That's kind of on autopilot.
How do those do? Because I've seen like a lot of these shows are like, they're trying to get like, Wall Street Journal will do like a 15-minute and under show. PBS, they'll be like quick 5 to 7 minutes. Some of them are really short. I'm like, that's so short, but does that work well?
It does. It's because he's just reading the articles. We had low expectations for it. We knew that it was never going to reach the heights of, say, a Real Estate Rookie, which is a podcast that's built around a community of shared beliefs. And that's some of the things we're going to get into today. But that is the most powerful thing, is when you can connect with people and there's a real live host who's a real person and there's inside jokes and you feel like you're part of a tribe. Bigger Pockets Daily is more of like just a service. I almost see as accessibility, right? Some people don't like to read blog articles. Some people are running around like you doing a million things. They might want to listen to a blog article. And so I just see it as a different medium where people can consume BP content rather than like, hey, let's build a big community around this. So overall, it's done pretty well, but it's got a lower sort of ceiling than a lot of other shows that center around personalities and community.
Gotcha. Well, it's just like Coke. Coke's main thing is Coca-Cola, is be your bigger part of the main show. And then they have Coke Zero, they have Diet Coke. They have different segments that, appeal to other people. They might not be a huge section, but you have the mainstay and then you have some add-ons that kind of appeal to more people, right?
And hopefully there's synergy between those. And that's kind of one of the things, the growing pains is how do you figure out how to promote things across shows and how do you sort of align schedules and keep everyone on the same calendar. It's certainly like a big logistical task, but I think BP is kind of, professionalizing everything that we do and becoming more organized. And, hopefully I'm a big part of that for years to come.
Has BP, since Josh, since Josh doesn't work there anymore, I think, have they allowed different things? Has it gone a different path? Like, how is it like opened up and expanded? I feel like you guys have done so many things really well. And Josh did so many things right. Like he busted his ass for 10 years and that guy is amazing. Hats off to him. I'm glad he's living his dream now. So has that changed things or was it kind of stayed the same or just growth mode?
I can only speak to Josh from a little bit, me knowing him and me listening to pretty much all the shows that he hosted. And so I think what Josh did, which is easy to overlook, is how much he stuck to the core principles of Bigger Pockets. And that being, hey, you shouldn't have to pay thousands of dollars in coaching or courses just to get started in real estate investing, right? Whether you want to do those things once you kind of have a business and you have more of a serious plan, okay, I'm not entirely against those things. And I don't think BP really is either, but I think they started out with that clear premise and Josh always stuck to that. And you hear him throughout the podcast episodes and he was always kind of noting, he was a little bit of a skeptic about certain things, right? He was saying, well, be careful here. Be careful if someone was really advocating a really risky strategy. He'd say, I see that backfire, or, hey, this is a plug-free zone, right? Or we're going to let you plug at the end, but you're on this to share value and create community. And so I really see his influence still like reverberating through the company. And there's a lot of questions that we have to ask ourselves as we scale as a company of, hey, is this still serving the user, or is this selling out the user for a short-term gain, right? And so every time we add a sponsored segment in the podcast, I do ask myself, is this serving the original like premise, right? Because you talk about Coca-Cola, the brand of BP is, hey, we're, you shouldn't have to pay $1 million. You shouldn't have to be manipulated and upsold to get basic information, and we should all help each other out. And so Josh has kind of set the foundation. And then once he's transitioned out of the company, I think he would tell you, in a lot of ways, he was probably a bottleneck for decision making, just like a lot of entrepreneurs this happens to. And so now we run Traction, EOS. We have very specific weekly check-ins on company happiness and employee happiness. They have great benefits package, and they're doing all these things that like a very professional startup would do, which might be harder with the founder in that seat. So it's just kind of that evolution of, he had the vision, he stuck to the vision, he grinded away at it for 14 years or whatever. And now it's kind of a matter of, hey, how big can we take this thing?
Yeah. So, and I would equate it to like 90% of people that have been in this game a little bit longer, they most of them equate that they read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and they got into real estate investing, right? I think in the next 5 to 10 years, that answer is going to be Bigger Pockets got me into real estate, right? Or I went and learned on Bigger Pockets. I read maybe Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I read something, and then I went and found Bigger Pockets. That's how I got started. I didn't know anything about anything. I was like, I want to buy more rentals. Type it in and Bigger Pockets. And then all of a sudden I'm found about wholesaling and this and that. I'm like, this is amazing. And so I think it's pretty cool what they've done. And I love how I feel like it's stayed authentic all the way through. So kudos to you for keeping that going. So,
Thanks,
all right. So have you done any other real estate deals? Let's talk really quickly about your real estate investing, what you've been doing, how we've been helping you a little bit, and then we'll jump into our segments.
Yeah, really quick. I bought my own condo for myself in 2013, lived there for like 5 years, started Airbnb-ing it. And that was my training wheels for rental property investing. I think my strengths as a person are like solving problems and sort of, I guess, dealing with people and dealing with situations as they come up. I'm not a natural sales guy or a natural like deal hunter. I'm a better like landlord, to be honest. And so I think Airbnb was a great way for me to start. And maybe people who have a similar personality type, like it's hospitality. And I kind of like that aspect. And I like to create an experience for people. And it gave me the bug. So I kept that rental. That's a 1-bedroom place. It rents out super easy. Doesn't cash flow much, but I'm paying down the loan.
Yeah.
One sec.
No.
So it doesn't cash flow much, but I'm paying down the loan, and it's an awesome area and a low HOA and that kind of thing. And then I'm house hacking with my wife here. We have a 3-bedroom side of a duplex, and then there's a 2-bedroom above, and it's a Section 8 tenant. And that I learned from Joe Asamoah, who appeared on your podcast recently.
Love that guy.
Kind of got into the DC Section 8, strategy through him, and wound up house hacking. And we pay maybe $600-700 out of our pocket each month to live in a nice area of DC, where a 3-bedroom is usually going to be $2,500 to $3,000 usually. And we're kind of in the game now. So really the next phase of my real estate investing is trying to source deals myself. And so I've been stumbling through that a little bit. I've done the tour of duty, as Tucker would say. I've done the tour of duty and, blanket the whole city in 1 mailer per lead, and then don't follow up. And then I just kind of took his advice of, hey, focus in, man, zero in on an asset type, and more specifically and importantly, specific pockets of the city where you want to generate deals, and then just layer on different marketing strategies to reach those people and really think, are you doing anything unique when you reach them? Because this is a very competitive market. I know everyone thinks their market's the most competitive, but every house I go to, they've got
the national news. So for your 67 cash offers out of 88 offers. For a house at 275 or whatever, got bid up to 460 and so, yeah.
Yeah, so it's wild. So, I'm sticking with it though, and I really don't have a quit date on that. With my setup, with my real estate investing right now, I live off, my wife and I live off of our W-2 incomes. We like our jobs. We don't want to quit our jobs. And we're in it for long-term investing. And so I'm willing to be patient and pick off one deal a year if that's what it takes. In this kind of market, that's fine with me. And that will lead to an amazing portfolio in 10 years. So for me, it's not about stacking up a million units. It's
Yep.
about being very selective and creating some deals with some equity in them. And they're there. And it's just on me to kind of make some small tweaks in order to really capitalize. I've lost out on a couple heartbreaking deals here, but great learning experiences.
You've been close. They'll hit. It just takes one to fall. But I always remember my dad telling me when I was a kid, just buy one rental a year for 10 years and you'll be great. Like, and then just start paying down the debt, faster with the other rentals as you have it. And, if you buy one house a year, each year for 10 years, but at 10 years, he wanted me to start at 20, which Chrissy did start at 20. But it's like, now you have 10 rentals by the time you're 30 or 35, and then they start paying them down and then they're basically paid off by 45 and you have 10 rentals or whatever, and you're freaking golden. Like, you can live forever.
And that's one of the benefits of listening to 400 plus Bigger Pockets real estate podcasts is I can't tell you how many times I've heard someone say, man, I wish I would have kept more of those, right? I've heard you say that.
Yeah.
I wish I would have kept every house I ever bought. Now it's a little more complicated than that because you got to generate cash to keep going. But if you have a good job and, you live below your means, I totally believe that that's a solid way forward and you don't really need to overcomplicate it.
Yeah, everybody, like, you listen to podcasts and they're like, oh, I got to go full time and I got to go fast and big and huge and build this huge company. It's like, no, that's why I did those 2 episodes on, like, if you like your job, how to make an extra $100,000 a year, wholesaling houses, and then how to make, $100,000 a year with rentals, right? Like, there's a lot of good jobs. People like their jobs. They don't want to quit. You know what I mean? If everybody quit their job, we'd all be screwed. So
exactly. I mean, that's my goal. And it's make it work with the lifestyle, right? So I work every day. I work for a couple hours on this stuff, trying to send high quality mailers to very specific people, scrubbing the list, drive for dollars, walk around the neighborhoods with my wife and mark down properties. We do that all the time. So I think all that's going to pay off. It's just a matter of, getting the at-bats and connecting.
Which, shameless plug for our buddy Justin over at Open Letter. He just came out. They just launched today, and I was a beta tester, but they just have their handwriting machines come out with. They have a cursive font and a regular, standard font letter. We sent out those with, like, I have like 1,100 with for development leads, so highly targeted list. We sent out like 2. We're sending them in 4 batches. I had like a 10% response rate last week on some of this land. With like the dollar bill, but it was expensive. It was like $380 landed with the dollar bill and all that. So I had them ship it to me so I could stuff the dollar bill. But like, the response rate is fantastic. And it cost me like $2,200 for the letters with them and then a dollar bill. So, $3,600. I mean, if I get one deal, which I've already made like 3 offers off of my first week, so sending high quality mailers, you're going to get really good deals. And the conversation just sometimes seems so much like, I had a guy leave me a message today. And these messages are just so much better. Like, I almost want to like go get messages from like the dollar bill mailers and handwritten letters to like just a normal letter. And it's like, they're giving you more information. They just like, yeah, I just want to talk to you. And they got your no, and it just so much more credibility.
And I think if you're new, don't ignore that, what Elliot just said, because there's a lot of stuff in this business that can beat you down. And obviously there's going to be people pissed off if you send them mail or call them or do whatever. But the more you can actually feel like you're helping someone or providing some value, and you send them that mailer and they call you and say, hey, take me off your list, versus, the alternative where they're really pissed off at you.
Yeah.
I think it fuels you more, and just kind of allows you to keep pushing forward and keep feeling like you're actually doing something good, as opposed to sending someone a last notice postcard and and knowing that you're being manipulative.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, if you're working a full-time job, you only need 1,000 or 2,000 leads, and it's really not that much money. Send 300 letters a week. Okay. It costs you $900 a week, or whatever, 900, doesn't matter. You can send a lot less stuff, higher quality. So, all right. So we're going to talk about, which segment are we doing first?
Let's go getting on podcasts, because I think this probably applies to maybe more people who at some point want to promote themselves and get on shows. So we'll go through these 4 tips and then we'll get on to creating your own show if you want to do it that way.
Cool. And so where I'll add value is like, I can speak to like maybe where you should be before you're getting on certain shows, like know where you're at on certain shows and how do you come off as well, and making sure you're adding value. That's really the biggest thing. So, all right. So go ahead. Tip number 1.
Awesome. So before tip number 1, let me just say, let me just jump right in. All right. The first tip is to design the episode for the hosts, to basically produce the episode for them. So this is a little bit of a rewire your brain thing where I think people have the wrong idea about podcasts, because probably a lot of times it sounds like, hey, this guy's just buddies with this other guy, right? Or gal. And they got him on the show and they started chatting. And all of a sudden this guy's dropping great nuggets about real estate investing. And wow, that was really cool how that worked out. Like that was just random. And it really doesn't work that way, especially with the bigger shows where we have a big platform and we do have to be pretty selective about who we put on. How it really works, it's not like the host is digging around for gold and trying to get the gold nugget out of someone. It's like the guest has shared the map where the gold is buried before the interview. And the hosts kind of pretend to be stumbling into that gold nugget. This is a Brandon analogy, of course. And so basically what it comes down to is podcast hosts and producers have a lot of stuff going on. In most cases, they've got their real estate business. They might have something else going on. They're kind of like lazy, right? Like it's better if someone just approaches you with a kind of a ready-made episode that's going to specifically add value to that audience, rather than saying, hey, can you get me on the show? And then you do all the hard work of researching me, finding out what's unique about me. And then hopefully we can stumble into those great moments. And so for me, like when I told you, hey, let's do this episode, I gave you some titles of the episode.
Yeah. And also like when I was getting back on the show the second time last year, you had reached out and we were like, let's think about, you're like, hey, you're like, Ellie, you don't need to fill out a form, but let's think about what the show is going to be. And I had this idea and this idea, and you're like, no, I don't like it. And then you're like, what about your wife? And I'm like, oh, they've tried it before and she wouldn't get on. But you're like, that's the episode I want to do. And so tell me how we get there? Because I had told you a lot about my wife and the business. You're like, so I had laid out that roadmap to you in our personal conversation. So, and let me lead into that with asking, like, out of how you do one show a week, basically with the main show, but like how many guests apply for every guest that gets on?
For the main Bigger Pockets show, we have probably 200 guests per month applying. And then that's not counting like guests that maybe Brandon has a personal relationship with, or David, and they just want to get them on. And then also like other things to understand behind the scenes are, we also have obligations to get certain people on the show. Like if Bigger Pockets has a book coming out, we probably want to get that author on the show to get that book, right? So a certain amount of slots, like if you look at a given year and there's 50 spots on the real estate show on Thursdays, maybe like 15 to 20 are already taken up by certain things, or they're more like when coronavirus happened, like we did topical shows, right? So we had to kind of throw out the guest thing and figure out what was going on. So what that means is basically it's very extremely selective, but that's not to say that one of the tips I'm going to basically give here, I'll just give it number 2 right now, is start small. Don't say no to any opportunities and build up a reel of podcast appearances, right? So don't, if a podcast has 124 downloads, that's higher than the median podcast out there. So that's already in the top. And that's 124 downloads. That's like if you ask your friends and family. Yeah. Per episode.
Yeah. I would listen to my own show 124 times. Just kidding. I don't have that big
So my point is, like, think of it this way. Here's a pitch that we give people when we're trying to get a huge guest on the real estate podcast. We say, politicians travel across the country to go speak to a stadium full of people, right? Like the Rose Bowl, pick like one of the bigger like football stadiums in the country. You can reach twice that amount of people and you don't have to leave your office, and you can do it in your underwear. Like, how does that sound? And it takes an hour. as opposed to traveling somewhere and doing this whole thing. The reach is incredible, and that extends even to much smaller shows. So like I would just ask someone if they are wondering whether it's worth it to go on a show, it's worth it alone just in terms of honing your storytelling, telling the story of your own brand, your elevator pitch, being comfortable being on the mic, being comfortable with the technical stuff that comes with it. But it's also worth it in terms of, would you say no to an opportunity to go speak to a RIA of 50 people? That's like a large showing in a lot of RIAs,
That's
or
great,
100
Rhea, yeah.
people. But a lot of these shows will have multiples of that, and it's almost a more intimate experience, I think, of you're just listening in your earbuds and you're hearing this person, you're caught up in their story, versus you're at an event and this person's on stage and there's kind of a barrier between you two. So one thing
I would equate it to like when I talk about
small.
Sorry, I would equate it like where I talk about all the time about when you're calling sellers, like record your phone calls and then listen to your calls back so you can learn. Like you need to go learn how to be good. If you want to go do podcasts or get on shows and promote your brand and sell whatever your brand is what people are selling now, right? Influence, right? So if I can build a brand like on Instagram or on the show or Tucker or Brandon, then they can sell things down the road, right? But in order to get there, you have to practice. You don't just all of a sudden become a blockbuster actor or a great, negotiator, all these things you have to practice. So any show that wants you on, try to do that, right?
Exactly. And that's one of the things that we look for is, hey, do you have a video of yourself doing public speaking? Do you have a podcast appearance you can point to? And we ask for it in the application. And just like with job interviews, job applications where you ask someone to do a specific thing, you can weed out 80% of the people when they don't put one in there. And that's not to say we haven't had great guests that hadn't appeared on podcasts before. I think that's perfectly possible. But if you have other speaking appearances you can point to, I think that gatekeeper is going to be a lot more likely to put you on the show. So start small and build up kind of your resume of appearances and use that when you're applying to shows or pitching people.
Now, let me ask you this, people that are applying, do they have to have this like huge resume of like, I've done all these really cool things? Like, how does that like factor in, like experience level factor into the decision-making process?
It's not as big of a part as you would think. We kind of just set a bar for like, hey, have you done 10 deals before for the real estate podcast? For the rookie podcast, have you done 1 or 2 deals? If you've only done 1, you better have a lot of really great lessons and story to go along with that. Usually most people on the rookie podcast have a handful, right? For the business show, have you played a major role in starting or scaling a business, whether you're a founder or a COO or something like that? So we kind of set a bar, but I think what this points to is there are a lot of people who apply and they say, man, I used to work a W-2. I got into self-development stuff. I do Miracle Morning and I have 20 units. I own millions in real estate, private lenders, whatever. It's awesome. It's all awesome stuff. But within the like bigger pockets world or the real estate investing world, there's nothing to really make it stick out. Would that be a memorable show to you based on what I just told you right there? I don't think so. Like what I remember from your show, Elliot, was you driving around for this bakery company and you talking about having issues with addiction in your life and playing golf because you want to make the most of your time, right? And you don't want to work 50-hour weeks. You'd rather work a 12-hour week.
Yeah.
That stuff, I think, is what appeals to me when I'm booking a show and what appeals to hosts, because they're already thinking this is a cool story. This is a handle or a hook that people can listen to and take this episode, and it's much more likely to be shared. Like we just had a guy on the Bigger Pockets podcast named Dion McNeely, and his episode title was The Lazy Person's Guide to Financial Freedom. And he basically kind of wrote that title for us because he came right out with it and said, I'm lazy. Here's all the ways I became financially free through house hacking, through laziness, right? Mm-hmm. That's so memorable. And that has 60,000 views on YouTube. There's another. And then if you're thinking to yourself, like, well, what makes me unique? Like, I don't have an amazing story. I'm not an 18-year-old college basketball player who's wholesaling deals like the gal that you
that girl, she was awesome.
Which was great. Like, so good. But if you're not that person, you can still come up with a list. You can say here, just like I'm doing on this show, here are the 4 things that I do. Here's my 4-point checklist for starting an Airbnb, right?
Mhm.
Here is my due diligence when I'm making an offer on multifamily. And me as the host of the show, I'm like, awesome. I'm going to share that. That's going to be a clip. We can turn it into a checklist that we give out to people. Rather than, hey, I have 1,000,000 units. Come figure out how to extract that valuable information out of me. I'm just giving it to you
Because
and
like
handing it over to
technically,
you.
I'm like a dime a dozen, right? Maybe not dime a dozen, but like for my 41 doors or buying stuff, there's a lot of people doing really well. Like you get Cole on here, like Cole's doing awesome at 23, but I'll go find a 21-year-old that's doing better than him, right? At the end of the day, or there are not maybe that many 18-year-old girls that are playing basketball, working at a bakery that have wholesale 2 deals. That's probably a lot more unique, right? But then all of a sudden I'm looking for a 16, there's always somebody that's done more cool shit. So like, I always feel like I love people that have faced adversity. Some kind of what adversity have you faced and challenge have you faced? I'd love hearing about people's struggles and how they've overcome them, because that gets me feeling good. Like, nice job. I want to root for you to win, and then tell me how you're winning, and then tell me how to win like you. And those are the things I really want to hear in a story, right?
Tell me how to win like you is a great way to think of it, because there was a guy who there's nothing really remarkable about him. We had on John Wooten, but he said, yeah, I have this thing called the sunflower method. That's my system for saving down payments. And it wasn't anything fancy. It was like him using an analogy from a smartphone game that he plays, like zombies versus plants or something like that. And he just says like, oh yeah, the goal of the game is to get as many sunflowers as possible. And that's how I look at my down payment strategy. And it's all about like, we always joke around all the time about how Brandon, didn't invent burr strategy. He didn't invent house hacking strategy, but what he did was place a label on those things that's easy to remember and easy to explain to other people. And it just caught on like wildfire, right? And he's starting to get a lot of the credit for those things, which he's like very self-deprecatory about. But I think until someone does that,
sorry,
yeah,
he created
the concept of renting out something you own to other people. Yeah. We have him to thank for that.
Yeah. And the burr method, Brandon Turner created the burr method. Like nobody was doing that before. I mean, I did, but anyway.
But literally if you approach someone and you say, hey, I have the, pick the ACE system for doing this thing, ACE, here's what it stands for. That's not a guarantee that you're going to get on the Bigger Pockets show, but that makes you stand out from the guy that just said, I have 35 units. I'm into self-development. Put me on the show.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. So those are the first two. Produce the episode for them. And number 2 was start small and build a reel and do the small shows while you're trying to get on the big shows, right? Because a lot of it's timing too. Want me to move on?
Yeah.
Number 3, share, get an equipment set up and share that with the host when you're pitching yourself to appear on the show. So take the initiative, buy a mic. We'll get into the details on that when we talk about a show, but just get a blue snowball. Tell the host, hey, I have a blue snowball. I have a mic. I have headphones.
Yeah.
Here's my lighting.
What's the difference with the headphones though? I don't understand. Like there's guys that do headphones all the time, and I've never, like, maybe my audio sucks. I don't know, but I just don't use them. What am I missing?
Well, what I would say is at least have them available in case someone cares about that. All this is it's taking away an excuse for the person not to have you on the show. It just makes it that much easier. Like if it comes down to like you and you're saying, hey, here's my mic, here's all my technical information, versus someone who's like, yeah, I don't know. Do I have to order a mic? Like, do you as the host want to walk them through that? No, like you got other stuff to do. So just get a mic, get headphones, say, hey, I'm ready to go. I can even make my own audio recording in QuickTime. That takes like 5 minutes to figure out how to do. And it's just one more reason to go with you. So we'll get into the equipment and stuff later.
What do the headphones do? I guess is more like, what's the benefit of the headphones?
Sometimes there can be an echo or there can be feedback when the sound is coming through someone's computer speakers. It can basically go into their mic.
Gotcha.
And when you're talking over each other, it could create an issue. Most hosts aren't going to care about it. Most times it's not going to be a problem. But I think just in case someone does, just bring them and just kind of be prepared.
Echo, echo, echo. Monty loves saying we'll go through tunnels or stuff. And Monty, we taught him echo in this like parking garage. And I'm like, echo. And so then anytime we go in like a structure, he's like, echo, echo.
That's so fun. Yeah. He probably holds his breath during the tunnels too, right?
No, we haven't done that far yet. But yeah. All right. That's good. Okay. Step 3. So
Yeah. So that's step 3. Just have a text set up and share it with the host. Just kind of take away that objection. The 4th thing is have a way to capture the leads once you appear on a show. So Elliot, did you have anywhere that you sent people to when you first appeared on BP?
No. And no, I had nothing. I didn't have anything to sell at that time. And I remember my business partner at the time, anytime I go speak, or not even sell, but I didn't have any place for anybody to go. So like I go speak, I go get on these podcasts. I did a bunch of different podcasts, and he'd be like, why are you doing this? And I'm like, it's fun. My ego at some point, but then it's like, I never had anything. Like I didn't grow on Instagram, so I had nothing.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people have appeared on BP and kind of regretted that. And I don't, I think it probably is smart, whatever show you're going on, to have some kind of lead magnet or some kind of opt-in that people who really want to get in touch with you afterward, who you resonated with, a way for them to get in touch with you and for you to nurture that relationship with them further. And so this is a fine line. You don't want to have it be a hard sell. And obviously everyone who's been on the show knows that I'm very militant about, don't plug stuff throughout the show. And even at the end, don't, tell someone, hey, go buy my course for $10,000. But if you tell someone, hey, go to this website, and then you have a landing page on that website that says, if you want to receive our emails, go here. If you want to get on our list for deals, go here. You can start to build more trust with that person because they heard your show, they liked what you had to say, but that's usually not enough for someone to say, oh yeah, take all my deals or let me lend you money. A lot of times they want to take that relationship further and basically nurture that. And so just use good taste, but whatever you do, have a way to capture those relationships with people. That's not just message me on IG.
And it's funny, that first show I did, like I had a bunch of people that just want to waste my time. They're like, hey, can I take you out of coffee? I'm like, no, I don't really like coffee. They're asking me for all these things and I didn't have anywhere to send them, but I had made one relationship. And this guy called me because I gave people my phone number or whatever on the show. And he called me and he worked for Titleist, which is a golf brand. And actually Acushnet, he's a patent attorney for them. And he called me and he had a couple of rentals in Texas. And we started talking about stuff and he wanted to buy more rentals. But I love golf. So we hit it off. And so he started sending me golf stuff. And then I was trying to help him find more rentals and help him advise him on his capital. Well, then he wasn't finding any rentals and he was too busy. So I'm like, why don't you just loan me some money and I'll put your money on some of my deals at 9%, 10% while, and if you have another deal pop up that you want to buy as a rental, just let me know. I'll go fund it somewhere else and give you your money back. But at least it's not sitting in your bank account. Well, ends up, he gives me a lot of cool golf stuff, but he also loaned me money on hands full of deals. But then we also just bought an 8-unit together, where I was buying an 8-unit. I put 2 people in that deal with me. It was like $1 million, and he was one of them. And so I've connected. And so it's like there is some really fruitful relationships. Like you're not gonna get a ton of them, maybe right off the bat, but just one good relationship makes that so worth it.
100%. One contractor, one referral, one, is that worth the time of spending an hour prepping to go on a show and spending an hour doing the show? Of course it is. That's something that could benefit you for years to come. So this stuff's totally worth it no matter the size of the show, and you'll become better and better as you go. And if you do well, you'll get onto the bigger shows.
Cool. All right. What's step number 4?
So those are our 4 steps. Oh, that's
so 4. Sorry.
Step one is basically produce the episode for the host. Okay. So that's the thing of tell them where the gold is buried, come up with your unique framework, your list, whatever it is. Lists are great. Number 2 is start small. Don't say no to any shows, build up your resume. Number 3, have an equipment set up and share the specs with the host so they know you're squared away, you're ready to go. They don't need to worry about that. And number 4 is have some kind of framework to capture the leads that come in once you appear on the show.
Cool. Awesome. All right. So let's go to segment number 2, where we're going to talk about starting your own show and what you kind of need, get that done, and what the benefits are that Tucker talked about in the intro today.
Perfect. So why do this? Why create why create your own show? Why to go to all the trouble? I mean, Tucker talked about it in the intro on the BP podcast. The last time he appeared, he said, I would highly encourage anybody that's willing to stick with it to put together a local show because most markets have no competition. That is something that stuck out with me, and I wrote that down here. Another guy I talked to, Josiah Smelser, who's the host of the Daily Real Estate Investor, he said, I said, what have been the benefits for you? He said, at a very low cost, you can create a loyal following and create trust, which is huge. I've had countless listeners contact me unsolicited asking if they could lend to me. And so basically, I think one concept before we jump into the 4 tips is someone might ask themselves, well, have I done enough to really be the host of a real estate show? Like a little bit of imposter syndrome, like someone like me, for example, done a couple of deals, but not really on fire in my real estate investing. Like, could I start a local real estate podcast? And the answer is absolutely yes, because you're not the guru. You are the guide that's taking everyone on the quest with you. And you're just trying to ask the right questions and bring people in, assuming your show is more of a dialogue show, not a monologue show. Like Tucker with the Real Deals was a little different. He kind of was the guy with a lot of answers when he started, and that's a little bit of a different format. But mostly you're going to be bringing in people, whether it's your co-host or your guests, who have expertise that you don't, and you're just going to be finding ways to ask the questions that your audience is asking. And so that is kind of just letting people know that you are probably qualified to do this if you're, if you at all are questioning that fact.
And if you don't know like what kind of questions to ask, because you're like, I don't know enough about this industry, what I do in my thought process is I just want to be like, I'm sitting next to you on a park bench, and in my mind, I'm never going to see you again. And I want to ask questions, and I want to go deep. I don't want to go wide. I want to go as deep as I can on certain things that I want to learn selfishly. So say you're a mortgage broker. Well, I want to learn all about the local mortgage industry and how your company handles mortgages and who sells them, who they sell them to, all these different things, right? Or a title company. How do you do a title report? What are you looking for in a title report? All these things that are different, and dive in deep to like what they're doing and just ask who, what, where, when, why, how, whatever. And I try to look at it in that sense. And you're going to gain a ton of knowledge as well, because you're asking experts what they do. And so you're going to learn a ton.
I think I remember a show. Do you remember on the Bigger Pockets show when you appeared there, did they ask you what you wear to seller appointments when you go on a seller appointment?
They might have.
It was either your show or someone else. And I remember that being a great question, because it's one of those questions that if you're trying to sound like a broadcaster or sound like what a professional news person would sound like, you wouldn't ask that question. You'd be like, oh, of course everyone knows that. But it's actually a great question. Like, what is the dress code for a real estate investor, right? Like, and so I think questions like that are that exact thing you're talking about, where you're on a park bench and you're wondering something and you're not embarrassed to ask it.
Yeah.
Because a lot of other people are asking that same question. I guarantee that.
Exactly.
Cool. So let's jump in. So the first one is basically that the premise of your show is the most important thing. So premise over everything. And what does that mean? It just means what is different for the listener after they listen to your show, and what sets you apart from all the other shows out there. We talked about how saturated this market is right now compared to when BP first came out. Just doing a real estate show about national, we talk to real estate investors and deconstruct the habits and strategies that lead to a successful portfolio to create financial freedom. That is not a unique thing. I guarantee you there's dozens of shows out there that have that as their premise and their promise to the audience. And I guarantee you that none of them gain much traction, and probably all of them will be gone within a year or two. What this is about is being able to write down a statement. And I got this from a guy named Jay Acunzo, who has a great blog called Marketing Showrunners. And I just want to give him credit for this whole thing, because this is exactly what we've applied at Bigger Pockets. Whenever we're about to do a new show, we ask ourselves like the question, and we make ourselves write down, this is a show about X, insert the topic. Unlike other shows about X, only we do Y, right? And so I think you can apply this to some examples to maybe show, basically illustrate this concept. But when the Bigger Pockets Real Estate Podcast first came out, this is a show about real estate investing. At the time, unlike other shows about real estate investing, only we believe you shouldn't have to spend thousands on coaching or get upsold to learn about real estate investing, right? Like, you shouldn't have to spend money on education to get started. Like, Tucker's show is basically, we are actually in the trenches showing you real deals every week and, playing calls and showing you the ugly side. And that was the thing that set him apart, maybe from BP at the time. Steve Trang's show, Real Estate Disruptors, is a live show where people can ask questions. And it's also aimed at people that want to create wealth quickly rather than sort of, invest in rentals and do stuff over time. They want to create generational wealth quickly. And so you can really apply this to anything in media when you look at a show and what makes it successful. Shark Tank is a show about business, but it's live sharks, quizzing people about their business plan.
I'll read mine. This is the one I did. So this is a show for you if you want actionable advice, humor, hear wins, and learning lessons. And you can follow along with someone who is just like you and your family. This show isn't going to just get you all excited about an idea with no actual plan. You will walk away from the show hearing from industry experts or for ideas, but then actually follow along our journey to hear how it's implemented. You understand that anything good in life takes hard work, time, and dedication. It's solid, but I would try to niche down even more. So here's how I'm going to give people some ideas to niche down, right? I think by doing a local show, you're already sort of niching down in a way that's perfect for you. So if you're keeping things broad within real estate investing, but you're doing the Phoenix show or you're doing the LA show or a certain pocket of LA, right? Like LA is probably too big. Then that is a perfect niche. So I think if you're doing a national show, that's okay, but do not do that. This is a show about real estate investing, generic. Totally.
It should be,
it's just
this is exactly who it's for. Here's what we believe. And if you believe this, come with us. That's kind of should be the feel of it.
Totally. Yeah, I know. I got to tweak it. I know, but you've helped me with that, getting better all the time on because when I took it over this show from Tucker, it's okay, who is Tucker and what has Tucker built? Because he's big shoes to fill, right? And I grew up with Tucker's show. I am because of who I am, a lot of because of who Tucker's show and him allowing me in the DFA and all these things. So it was such big shoes to fill because this is your guy that I idolize and I look up to, and he's the guy, right? And he's cool. I mean, he's cool as a cucumber. I found out he was basically a professional snowboarder, but you just look at the guy and you're like, I want to be his friend. So, but he built such a good, he could monologue and he could interview and he could do both so well. But he always had the drive to do right and teach people how to do this business. And no
BS. I think that's part of the brand as well, right? No fluff, no BS. Gonna show you the ugly side. Going to give you hard truths, I guess. And I think one thing that came through in your statement, I would like it to be more specific and sharp eventually. But the thing that was coming through that was good was you have certain frustrations about you're consuming content about real estate investing all the time. Are there certain things that frustrate you about, hey, this is kind of missing out there, or I don't like this about a lot of shows, right? There's got to be things.
There's no action. That's the problem is a lot of this. There's no action. It's that's why I've been doing the seller calls and stuff like that is what can you take away and actually go implement today? Okay, if we're doing a local show, what's our local market like today? What's going on in our local market today? How can I get this kind of loan or this kind of lender or this type of but it's there's something that I can take a normal guy, take from you and go put in my business today.
And that's the perfect place to start when you are thinking of your premise. Okay. So your premise can just be, hey, this is a local real estate investing show. That's probably good enough. But if it can address a frustration that you have, if you can write down on a piece of paper, here's what frustrates me about real estate investing content. No one's keeping it real about X, Y, and Z. And then you can say, hey, we do that here, and here's how. Then you've really got something. And all of this is so much more important, Elliot, than which podcast hosting platform you use, which mic you use, which day of the week you publish on. I could keep going forever. It's the most important thing. It's the sharpening the axe before you start. And that is what people should spend time on. And then kind of, along with that, think about who your avatar is. Who is the average guy or gal listening to your show? And you should know everything about that person, just like with a business that kind of knows their customer avatar. You should start to think of that person And I think Brandon actually has talked about how when he writes a book, he prints out a photo of someone that he's writing that book for and explaining those concepts to in his mind, and puts it in front of him when he's typing. And he did it. His brother was that person. He wrote a whole book just thinking, would he understand what I'm saying? What do I need to break down to him, etc.
Nice. That's awesome. Hopefully he'll write a book about me sometime.
I think so.
Yeah.
Series.
I'll ask him tomorrow when we're interviewing him tomorrow. So, all right. So what would you say step 2 is?
Step 2, I have choose your co-host very carefully. So if we're talking about a local show, following in the mold of Tucker, an agent and an investor are a great combo because there's not competition between the two of them. 2 investors, things are going to get weird for sure. 2 agents, things are definitely going to get weird. If you're an investor, I would look for a person who you can have synergy with in your business, but maybe not someone that you're tied to, maybe not even your business partner. I'm not even sure that's a great idea. The show, because if you're really committed to it, it should be able to go on, even if things disrupt your own business. So I would look for someone that fills in those knowledge gaps for you. So for Tucker with his partner on Portland's show, I've listened to several of their shows, and it's awesome because he has a completely different mindset around marketing and who his clients are, but he's got his pulse on, the high end market and what's going on and what agents are saying and how laws are changing around closing disclosures and all kinds of things that agents have to worry about. So the things you want to look for with a partner or a co-host are basically, like lack of competition, but also just commitment, because consistency is the most important thing. And so it's a lot harder than you think to crank out content every week. You want someone who you can do solo shows with. You don't always want to have to rely on rustling up a guest. So someone that's down to sit down, hash out responsibilities, put them on paper, divide and conquer, and just commit, right? And that can be great because you can both benefit in different ways from the leads that come in.
Yeah, I think that's great. It is hard. And, the reason, Cole was helping me with the show, and he'll probably come back at some point, but he's 22, he's living life. He's got 2 companies, living in San Diego, and it got really busy. And it was just the one thing that it just didn't have time for, right? He had to, make a choice. And there was no negative there, but it's hard. Like even doing this by myself is like, I'll get behind on guests, or we had one episode that got deleted. So I couldn't put an episode out that week because we didn't download it correctly or whatever. So trying to get ahead of schedule, but then I have to do the intros the week of the show release. Right. And so I can talk about what's going on in that week, and then getting the content on Instagram and getting it out, luckily Dan puts the content on the, on the platforms, but making sure it's edited, making sure it sounds right. It is a lot. Like when I took it over, like I always do things and ask questions on the way down, like I jump out of the plane and then I'm like, oh, where's my parachute? But, so I definitely, and Tucker, the one thing I love about Tucker is he's there to guide and coach and give feedback, but he's just allowing me to go screw up and allowing me to go figure it out. He doesn't micromanage any of it. He doesn't, I talked to him about a new idea for a new series, and he's like, here's my thoughts behind it, but do whatever you want. If you're okay with the outcome I think it will happen, then go with that, So it's really cool, but it is so freaking hard. There's a lot to do. And it doesn't matter whether you have 1 million listeners or 1 listener. It's the same thing if you're going to do it right. Yeah.
I think if you can't commit to doing 100 episodes, probably just don't even do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And doing it consistently and making sure it's out there. And again, I have my good buddy, John Farber. He does a millionaire real estate investing show, millennial millionaire real estate. And I remember he had told me he had like over 100 shows because he's doing a ton of them, but was celebrating. He had 15,000 total downloads or whatever. And it's just like in my head, I'm like, cause I stepped into a show that has, maybe that in a month. Right. And, not that, but whatever the numbers are. And I'm like, he's still doing it and being consistent. Like it's just like real estate where you have to have that stick-to-itiveness, no matter how long it takes you to get a deal. It could take you a month. It could take you a year, take you 2 years, but you have to never give up.
Yeah. And not get caught up in that comparison game. I would say it's not even worth looking at your statistics for the first 6 months to 12 months of doing the show. I think it's not about that. It's about learning how to be on the mic and develop your persona and develop your show and your chops. And if you look at anything regarding statistics, look at the growth, don't look at the overall number and compare yourself to other people. It really doesn't make sense to put sponsors on your show. I think if you start your own show, I think you should just use that real estate to, do your own lead capture, which we'll get to. But sponsors doesn't make sense. It's a $25 cost per 1,000 listener ad model out there. Usually, maybe you can get more if it's like a local sponsor or something. But think about that. You're getting 20. If you can get 1,000 listeners to your show, which is a ton, you get $25 for that ad. So it's not even worth the time of putting that together. You just look at it as, hey, is this impacting my business in a positive way? Am I able to network better because I'm on equal footing with the people who I bring on the show? And I'm able to basically get a free pass to talk to anyone in my market. Yeah. And is it benefiting my business? Am I having self-growth from it? That's what matters, not whether you got 500 or 1,000 listeners.
Would you look at numbers if you took over somebody's show?
No comment. No, I honestly wouldn't, dude. I would focus on the foundational work of what is it, like sharpening that statement that you said earlier. It's tricky for you since you took over a new show. But I would focus more on what is this show all about and what are the segments and formats that achieve the goals that I'm setting out for. I think that does a lot more. Basically, the best marketing for your show is not going to come from having more data about the listeners and numbers, zeros and ones. It's going to come from creating awesome content that they then share within their network, and the whole thing, snowballs.
What about length of shows? Like, have you guys done studies of like how long, what's the right amount of time? Because can you see if people like shut off the show or how much listen? Because I know you can do that on Instagram or like with videos and stuff. So
yeah, Apple allows you to look at that. There's a thing called Podcasts Connect, and it will allow you to see which episodes are, people listen farther in than other ones. You can see when the sponsors messages come up. Like for us, our listenership takes a dip, then it comes back up because people are fast forwarding through. A certain amount of people, no one should be fast forwarding through our ads, by the way, are fast forwarding through those and then coming back. And you can see all that data in Apple. But like I said, that stuff is better done not through looking at data. It's better done talking to your listeners and having a conversation with someone or sending out a survey and asking them, hey, do you like longer episodes? Do you like shorter episodes? And then a certain amount of time, it's going to come to your gut and your intuition as a host and what you want to do.
Yeah, cool. Because sometimes and I'm talking, the guys, I'm trying to ask questions too, because I'm trying to get better. I always want to get better and learn. So I'm asking questions that I think are applicable to me that will probably be applicable to this as well. Because I always get, am I going too long? Do I have too much this or too much that? And I'm changing. The problem is I have a tendency to not stay consistent with things. I'm staying consistent with the show, but then I always want to try this new thing instead of staying with it. And it's the same thing too. We go back to real estate with marketing. People will I'll send one direct mail letter out and it doesn't work. So then I'll go do cold calling and then I'll go do this and I'll go do this thing or this thing, right? Instead of just staying consistent with something for 6 months or 3 or 6 months or whatever. So that's where that's
why that foundational work of creating that premise and creating that belief system of the show is so important, is because it guides those decisions down the road. Then you're not just feeling like you're kind of lost at sea. You're like, this specific format that I'm thinking about, does it further the goal that I set out to do? Does it further all those things that you mentioned about real life examples of how to do this thing? And then it's just like a compass in that way that will point you in the right direction.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Step 3.
Step 3 is keep it simple with the technology. This is, like I said, it's the LLC. It's the business card. It's the Carrot website. It's the thing that gets people tripped up and allows them to put off starting what they could do today. So a lot of this stuff is very easily Googleable. Okay. So don't spend as much time on it as that work that we just talked about, but keep things very simple. Just start with a Zoom call. Free Zoom will allow you to go up to 40 minutes recordings. If you need to go above that, it's like $20 a month or something like that for a pro account. You should be able to get everything done for under $100 a month subscription wise. Mike, we talked about it when we talked about getting on shows. Blue Snowball is about $50. No reason why you need to start with anything beyond that. The mic that I'm on, ATR 2100, is about $75. It's also great. Skip the mixer. You don't even need to worry about that. Just plug the mic directly into your USB port and you'll be fine. And then some of the higher end mics, like the ones we use on BP, are Shure SM7Bs, and those are like $400 probably. But one thing is the environment that you're in is actually more important than the microphone. So if you can get in a small room with soft surfaces, ideally I would have like a blanket on my desk here. Really ideally I'd be like in a really small room, like a closet or something like that. Like that's extreme, but that is more important. You could have a great mic. If you're in a big echoey room, it's not going to sound very good. So just understanding some basic things about your environment. And then it's actually better to host a show with someone that's in a separate location. That's like, most people will probably be doing that, but it's harder to figure out the tech if you're sitting with them and there's could be some feedback issues, or you have multiple mics going into a computer. It's easier for me and you to host a show across the country than if we were sitting here together. And then podcast platform, this is actually the server that, blasts your podcast out to all the various directories like Spotify and Apple Podcasts and that kind of thing. That you should just go with Libsyn. It's the cheapest, easiest starter pack option, and that you can probably get away with $20 a month if you're doing a show once a week with Libsyn.
So funny story. I didn't take that advice. So when Tucker, Cole and I did the first show while he was gone. He was doing Steve Trang's show. And I'm like, hey, why don't you joking? I always ask people for things I want, but then like joking, like, oh, if they don't give it to me, whatever, I still ask. But I'm like, hey, why don't you let Cole and I hop on the mic for a week and take over the show? He's like, all right, do it. Well, then he came back the next week and he's like, hey, you guys did good. Why don't you guys take over the show? And I'm like, yes, I was like, this is the greatest thing ever. That day I went and bought all these foam boards. I went and bought a new camera. I went to my dad's house. I didn't buy a microphone because my dad has done a bunch of audio stuff. So he had a bunch of microphones. So I got that, but I bought all this stuff. I probably spent like $700-800 on this stuff to get the room set up. And then I was putting these foam boards behind me in my office and I was so excited. And now I've been trying to get like cameras, like high-tech cameras, because I'm on the Zoom all the time. I started out with like a 6K, a Blackmagic 6K. I couldn't figure it out. This thing was like $2,500 with the lens and everything. Then I returned it, and then I went to a Lumix G5, and that thing didn't work out because it needed an $800 lens. And I'm like, I thought it was the same lens, so I returned that, lost $200 on the restocking fee. Then I just bought a Canon that's like $1,200. Now that thing stopped working, and it won't stream for longer than 30 minutes. And so I just bought another camera that's less, but right now I'm using the camera that's just this $100 Razr camera that works really well. And I'm like, shit, but so yeah. It doesn't make my content any better.
Was that the most important step at any point in that process? Right. I mean, it's good to strive for quality, and it's an ongoing process, but it's the equivalent of, rearranging the different Carrot homepage layouts to see if they convert better.
But it didn't stop me from doing the show. That's the only difference, is like, if it's going to stop you from taking action and doing, I was still doing the show. I was just trying to make it. I've always been trying to get better. I'm still doing the show weekly. Right. So if it's going to hold you back from starting it, that's the issue. And you don't need a ton of money to start it. Just take action. It's like making that seller call. Just drive for dollars and call people with CallRail. It's all you need to start. Yep. Then you can get the Carrot website, the other stuff with it.
Yeah. One last note on technology, editing the show. Obviously that's a whole separate conversation, but it probably takes, double the time of recording it. So just budget, most of this stuff can be hired out for. You can go on Upwork and find someone to do all these steps that I just talked about for you and figure out, how do I submit my show to Apple? It's all online and it takes time, but you can find an audio editor on there for less than $10 an hour. So,
I use Audacity though, when I'm like doing my like seller clips where I'm doing that. That's free. It works really well.
Super simple.
It's just, it records it to MP3. So like, if you're going to record something, like everything I do for the seller clips is when I'm talking over, I'm just using Audacity to do that, cut and paste, block out this thing or that thing. We have somebody that edits the show, but yeah.
Yeah.
So you can use Audacity. That's a really good, easy, free platform.
Perfect. Last thing. Okay. Number 4 is similar to the capture leads. And that's just create a funnel with this show and keep this simple too. So, the way Tucker does it is just with an audio clip in the beginning of the show. Hey, if you have leads that, houses that aren't retail ready, that probably need to be bought by an investor, talk to us. Right. And my advice would be to kind of leave that open-ended and sort of just, you're providing value because you're the networker at this point, right? You're the person that started either the meetup or you've started the podcast. You're the one that brings people together. And so this is kind of a huge like co-wholesaling opportunity for a lot of people, I would think, because your audience is probably going to be like really obsessed with finding deals and out there hustling, but they might get some deals under contract and not know what to do with it next and be scrambling and looking around for someone like you. And so if you kind of like leave it open to, hey, if you have deals, come to us, we'll JV them, whatever. I think that can create some great opportunities for yourself in addition to just distressed homeowner leads. And then of course, if you're co-hosting with an agent, that's a perfect source of leads for them with house hackers, and so on. I run a real estate meetup in DC. We put it on pause for the past year, but with Russell Brazil, an agent out here, and just starting that meetup and having 3 or 4 great meetings in early 2020, like did huge things for his business as far as lead gen, and podcast is the same way.
Yeah, I run a local meetup with my buddy that had been doing it before. And when I moved back to town, he asked me to run it with him. So we run the Facebook page and the $2.1 million 25 unit we're buying is from that. Like a kid, this agent had been cold calling people to find some rentals, and he had posted something and I commented on his thing, but he knew me, I knew his dad, and he's like, hey, I got this deal, send it to me. And I'm like, okay. So I just kind of started taking a ton on the lead. I'm going to pay him a good chunk of money for this lead. And we're in the process of closing on a $2.1 million deal, all because some of the time I spent, because I'm the expert. They're like, this guy can close, this guy knows what he's doing. This guy is the guy that, people ask me all the time, who do you know? Well, I know this guy, that deal that I was raising money for, I didn't put the deal together. Perfect example, the 13 unit we're building, I didn't put the deal together. My buddy reached out because of networking and said, hey, do you know a builder that could build this 13 unit? And I'm like, yeah, let me put you guys together. Didn't think anything of it. My buddy that's the builder, he's like, hey, come on in. You're getting equity in this. Ended up getting 20% equity of the deal for putting the deal together and finding the financing. And it's just like, I'm not doing any of it. Now I'm a 50-50 because we traded some equity, but it's like, I'm not going to build the 13 unit. I didn't find the deal. I'm not going to have to put that much money into it. We're going to, so it's like, man, that's a huge benefit right there. Or my Titleist buddy, right? Same deal.
Yeah, the credibility of all the guests that you have on your show is kind of rubbing off on you, and you have, a reason to talk to them, and you have your foot in the door. If you call up a big builder in your area and you say, hey, I have a Chicago real estate podcast, like they're going to listen, right? As opposed to let me pick your brain. So you can bolt on obviously an email list, which Tucker does, and the more sophisticated marketing, but just in the interest of keeping things simple, use the same audio clip in every episode. You only have to record it once. Your audio editor knows exactly how to put it in there. And then you just have a landing page where you send people to and build those relationships.
Gotcha. So let me ask you this. If you're starting a local show and it's going to be about a local market, my mind goes to, I'm going to run out of people to talk to. There's only so many different things. How would you structure a show like that? I think Tucker's done a really good job with how they have their monthly masters in real estate content. Him and Steve will, do their market analysis one. But why don't you talk through like how you would structure it so you don't run out of guests or things to talk about?
Yeah, I would look at it as far as I would think about what shows can we do just as solo shows, like going back to that idea of lists, right? Like how can we figure out, I've thought about in DC, there's all these different types of row houses in DC with different architecture. And I'm like, man, that could be a whole podcast episode of like how the different type of row house affects the value of a home, right? So things that show you as the local expert or show the agent, a lot of times agents know those things really well. Like diving into the local history or neighborhood profile, right? Like if you're like, all right, we're doing a profile of this specific neighborhood, its history, its values, where it might be going in the future development. We can plan out one of those a month for the next year. And then we build around that. And then boom, we've got 12 episodes planned. Now we move on to the next one.
Yeah, I'm just thinking right now, because we have another Costco coming into our town. So people are going to want to know what's going out there. What's the plan? How's the development going to affect this? Where are we at with the streets, the sewer, the roads? What, you could have, just that one thing, you could have a lot of conversations with a lot of different people about what's going on out there,
Yeah, you can interview, politicians running for office and ask them about their thoughts on development, real estate laws. You can look at laws that are coming down the pike. And again, that doesn't have to be you knowing everything. That can be you talking to the local, blogger for the city paper that knows about it or something like that. And so I think just getting creative, if there are meetups in your area, finding a way to collaborate with those meetups and playing the recordings of the speakers that they have, right? And then you're both winning and they're getting exposure. And so I think there's endless possibilities. In a lot of ways, it's easier to say something original in a local sense than it is given how much content there are about various strategies with real estate investing, right? At a certain point, it gets hard to say original things about the Burr method. But if you're in your own backyard, I think there's amazing possibilities.
Well, it's kind of like your NPR days too, where the news, there's always new news to report. So if you're in your town talking about local, elections or local strategy or local things that are going in your market, there's always something new, right?
Yep.
There's a new construction project going on. There's some new bridge being built or new roads doing, what's that going to affect? So
think how many house hackers there are in your market who would be interesting people to talk about, right? Yeah. It'd be so easy to find them through BP or, just put a call out and find them, or talk to an agent and find them. And then just have a standard BP style conversation with them. Hey, how did you find this deal? Who are the vendors you use? Give the vendors a shout out, create a relationship with them. So right there, alone, I think we've taken care of like a whole year's of show.
Yeah. Now here's the problem, Kevin. Now I'm thinking, shit, I need to start a local show. I always like, my wife's going to kill me because I have too much on my plate already, but my schedule's lighting up a little bit. So I'm like, I think I have time now.
No, I always lament like the shiny objects stuff in real estate, and I've gotten caught up in it myself and haven't focused. But then meanwhile, I'm the biggest perpetrator of the shiny object syndrome because I'm booking people on the show who are, mobile home investors. And then I'm getting this development guy over here, Evan Holiday. And, we're getting people interested in a lot of different things. But once something does stick with you, obviously focus, follow one course until successful.
Cool. Awesome, man. This was such good information. And I love that you're helping us with the show too. And you're actually having some of the guests that, you're unsure, might be a good fit for you guys, but putting them over to me to see if I can get them on the show as well. So that you're helping me with that. So I really appreciate, kind of giving people, this is like an audition almost sometimes, like you talked about earlier with your shows. It's kind of an audition to, can you go do other shows? Once I got on Bigger Pockets, all these other people wanted me to be on their show. Right. And so I appreciate all the support. I know Tucker does as well. And I hope we're helping you just as much as you're helping us. And this was just great content. And I don't even care if just one person listens to it. They might start a badass show though, if they listen to this.
Yeah, I hope so. And if you guys have any questions, do not hesitate to hit me up, kevin@biggerpockets.com. And I don't have anything to sell, which I guess is hypocritical because I said you should capture all the leads when you go on a show. But I will say, if you have a great guest, send them to biggerpockets.com/guest, or if you want to apply to be on the show. And no promises, but we do take a look at all those and, put those principles to work.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Well, I'm going to let you get back. Probably got a baby to take care of. I don't know if it's your turn, but thanks again for coming on. And again, guys, if you have any questions, reach out to Kevin. If you want to be on the show, I highly suggest reaching out and go start your own show. I think every local market should have their own real estate show. I think that's really missing. They have business journals. They always have business journals in their areas. They need a real estate show. So go let it be you. Make it be you. So.
Thanks very much, Elliot and Tucker, for all you guys do. Appreciate you.
Later, man.